Okay, so this is the Daf Yomi. We just, actually, it was for September 16th, we started Tractate Zevachim. So we actually are now, I apologize that I didn't get any videos up for Horayot. I will try to intersperse that and get that in there so that we cover everything. We're almost 10%, we're almost like 10% through the Gemara right now, the Babylonian Talmud. But anyway, so we're in Zevachim. So it's basically, it means slaughtered offerings. So, what was I going to say? Oh, this is the first tractate in the order Kadoshim. So the order of holiness. The Mishnah is divided into 6 orders. I have a video on this, a little mnemonic, Zaman Nakat. So Zera'im is seeds. Moed is the festivals. Nashim is the order of women. Nizakin is damages. Kadoshim is holiness, and like in this case, matters of holiness. And Taharot, or matters of purity. So this is towards the end of the Mishnah, right? So this is the second to the last order in the Mishnah. This is the first tractate for that. So again, all the tractates of the Talmud begin with Daf 2. So page 2, there's no page 1. So we're this was for September 16th, but it's the 17th right now. I apologize. But anyway, Daf 2, Amud Aleph, the Mishnah says, all slaughtered offerings that were slaughtered not for their own sake, that is during the slaughtering, the slaughterer's intent was to sacrifice a different offering, are fit. And one may continue their sacrificial rites and partake of their meat where that applies, but these offerings did not satisfy the obligation of the owner, who is therefore required to bring another offering. This is the halacha with regard to all offerings except for the paschal offering and the sin offering. In those cases, if the owner sacrificed them not for their own sake, they are unfit. But there is a difference between the two exceptions. The paschal offering is unfit only when sacrificed not for its sake, at its appointed time, on the 14th day of Nisan, afternoon, while the sin offering is unfit any time that it is sacrificed not for its sake. Okay, so Rabbi Eliezer says the guilt offering, Asham, the guilt offering, too, is unfit when sacrificed not for its sake. According to his opinion, the correct reading of the Mishnah is the paschal offering is unfit only at its appointed time, while the sin offering and the guilt offering are unfit at all times. Rabbi Eliezer said in explanation, the sin offering is brought for performance of a transgression, and the guilt offering is brought for performance of a transgression. Just as sin offering is unfit when sacrificed not for its sake, so too the guilt offering is unfit when sacrificed not for its sake. Yoshi ben Honi says, not only are the paschal offering and the sin offering unfit when slaughtered not for their sake, but also other offerings that are slaughtered for the sake of a paschal offering and for the sake of a sin offering are unfit. So Shimon Ahi Azariah, so Simon, the brother of Azariah, says, and he's called the brother of Azariah, he's called Shimon, the brother of Azariah, because Azariah supported his Torah learning. So his name gets attached to his. So Shimon Ahi Azariah says that this is the distinction with regard to all offerings. If one slaughtered them for the sake of an offering whose level of sanctity is greater than theirs, they are fit. If one slaughtered them for the sake of an offering whose level of sanctity is less than theirs, they are unfit. How so? Offerings of the most sacred order, sin offerings and burnt offerings, for example, one slaughtered for the sake of offerings of lesser sanctity, meaning peace offerings or such, are unfit. So offerings of lesser sanctity that one slaughtered for the sake of offerings of the most sacred order are fit. Likewise, there is a distinction between different offerings of lesser sanctity. The firstborn animal and the animal tithe that one slaughtered for the sake of a peace offering are fit, as the sanctity of peace offerings is greater. Peace offerings that one slaughtered for the sake of a firstborn animal or for the sake of an animal tithe are unfit. The Gemara says, the Mishnah teaches all slaughtered offerings that were slaughtered not for their sake are fit, but they did not satisfy the obligation of the owner. The Gemara asks, why do I need the Mishnah to teach this halacha using this language? But they did not, so ela shalo, satisfy the obligation of the owner. So let it teach simply, and they did not, or velo, satisfy the obligation of the offering. What does the word elah add? The Gemara responds, by adding this word, the Mishnah teaches us that the only deficiency with regard to these offerings is that they did not satisfy the obligation of the owner, but they retained their sanctity, and it is still prohibited to deviate from the protocol of their sacrificial process. That is, the remaining rites must be performed with proper intent. And this is the beauty of the Torah, is you see here that it's getting down to the detail of the words. So if it says this, Ela Shalo, why does it need to say, it could have just said it, with one word, right? Why do we need the two words or something like that? So this is the beauty of the Torah. There's comments in worlds of meaning just on why one word is used and not another, or why a phrase is used and not simply one word in this case. Okay. This halakha is in accordance with the statement of Rava, as Rava says, with regard to a burnt offering, the one slaughtered not for its sake, it is still prohibited to sprinkle its blood on the altar, not for its sake. So the Gemara adds, if you wish, propose a logical argument to support the statement, and if you wish, cite a verse as proof. The Gemara elaborates, if you wish, propose a logical argument. Just because one deviated from protocol in its sacrifice once, that is, in its slaughter, could it be that he should continue to deviate from protocol in all the rest of the sacrificial rites? So one deviation does not justify additional deviations. And if you wish, cite a verse. Quote, that which has gone out of your lips, you shall observe it and do, according to what you have vowed. So, nadarta, freely, nadava, to the Lord your God. Even that which you have promised with your mouth. Deuteronomy 23:24. The Gemara interprets the words nadarta and nadava exegetically. Can this verse be referring to a gift offering? Nadava? Okay, so it says it is already referred to as a vow offering or neder. Rather, the verse indicates that if you did what you vowed to do, that is, you sacrificed your vow offering properly, it shall be a satisfactory vow offering. And if you did not sacrifice it properly, it shall be rendered a voluntary gift offering unrelated to the vow, and shall not satisfy the obligation of your vow. So the Gemara concludes, and it is prohibited to deviate from protocol in the sacrifice of a gift offering ad initio. So clearly it is not. So evidently, even if one of the sacrificial rites was performed for the sake of sacrificing a different offering, it is still prohibited to perform any of the other sacrificial rites in the incorrect manner. Ravina said to Rav Papa, since you were not with us last night within the Shabbat limit of Beharmach, you did not hear that Rava raises a contradiction between two superior statements from the Mishnah and teaches their resolution. So what are these superior statements? We learned in the Mishnah, all slaughtered offerings that were slaughtered not for their sake are fit, but they did not satisfy the obligation of the owner. So Rava infers the reason that they did not satisfy the obligation of the owner is specifically that they were slaughtered not for their sake. But if offerings were slaughtered without specification of intent, they, as well, satisfy the obligation of the owner. So apparently, if one performs any action without its specification of intent, it is also considered as if he performed it expressly for its sake. And Rava raises a contradiction from another Mishnah, Gittin 24a. Any bill of divorce that was written not for the sake of the woman in question is not valid. And it is derived from the continuation of that Mishnah that if a bill of divorce was written without specification as to which woman it is referring to, it is also not valid. So when Rava resolves the contradiction, ordinarily slaughtered offerings stand designated for their own sake. So from the time that the offering is consecrated, it is presumed its presumed end is that it will be slaughtered for the type of offering for which it was consecrated. Therefore, even if the one slaughtering it has no particular intention, it is in effect considered it is considered slaughtered for its own sake. By contrast, an ordinary wife does not stand designated for divorce. Therefore, a bill of divorce is never presumed to be referring to a given woman unless it is specified explicitly. The Gemara asks, and from where do we derive that slaughtered offerings are fit and even satisfy the obligation of the owner if slaughtered without specification? So if we say it is from that which we learned in the Mishnah, all slaughtered offerings that were slaughtered not for their sake are fit, but these offerings did not satisfy the obligation of the owner, and it does not teach this using the language, all slaughtered offerings that were not slaughtered for their sake are fit. But these offerings did not satisfy the obligation of the owner. This cannot be done. This cannot be. So one cannot infer from this language that slaughter without specification is valid, since the Mishnah also teaches with regard to a bill of divorce. Any bill of divorce that was written not for the sake of the woman is not valid, and it does not teach that was not written for the sake of the woman is not. Sorry, that's kind of confusing. It says any bill of divorce that was written not for the sake of the woman is not valid, and it does not teach that it was not written for the sake of the woman is not valid. And it is given that a bill of divorce written without specification is not valid. Okay, so rather perhaps it is derived from that which we learned in a Mishnah, 13a. How are offerings slaughtered for their sake, then not for their sake? For example, one might slaughter the Paschal offering for the sake of a Paschal offering, and then for the sake of a peace offering. The Gemara infers the reason such an offering is unfit is that he says that he is slaughtering it for the sake of a Paschal offering, and then he says that he is slaughtering it for the sake of a peace offering. But if he says that he's slaughtering it for the sake of a Paschal offering, and then slaughters it without specification, it is fit. Apparently, slaughtering an offering without specification is considered as if one slaughtered it for its sake. So if you're familiar with this, in your Siddur, typically at the beginning, before you hit Pesuki de Zimra, before you get to Rabbi Yishmael, you have Mishnah Zevachim Perach Hey, so chapter 5 of Zevachim, and it goes through the different offerings. And you'll notice if you have the very last one, it talks of, well, the very last two is the peace offering. It's an offering of lesser holiness. And then it goes, the last paragraph there is the firstborn and tithe of animals and the Pesach offering are raw offerings of lesser holiness. And it compares these two. This is it's a very good section to read when you're doing your davening in the morning. It's very good to go over that. But that's actually, it's coming from this tractate a little further on. But that's what it's talking about there. So you have a peace offering, which is a little bit different sanctity, and then the Paschal offering, which is lower sanctity. And, again, contrast that to Christianity, where they say that, who is a Passover, whatever. And actually in Judaism, that's a very low sanctity offering. Because, and it's not saying that it's like, it's a big holiday. It's actually an extremely important holiday. But it's lesser sanctity because everybody's partaking of it. It's not like restricted to a priest or a priest family or, something like that. So because it's being opened up and more people can participate in that sacrifice and, consuming it, basically anybody that's registered for it, then it's lower sanctity. Sanctity is separateness, right? So where was I? Let's see. Yes. The Gemara responds, perhaps there it is different, as the Mishnah is saying that anyone who performs an action performs it with his original intent in mind. Therefore, since he specified initially that he was slaughtering the offering for the sake of a Paschal offering, there are no grounds to assume that he then changed his mind. Here, by contrast, he pronounced no initial statement of proper intent. Rather, perhaps this halakha is derived from the latter clause of that Mishnah. How are offerings slaughtered not for their sake, and then for their sake? For example, one might slaughter the Paschal offering for the sake of a peace offering, and then for the sake of a Paschal offering. The Gemara infers, the reason it is unfit is that he says he is slaughtering it for the sake of a peace offering, and then he says he is slaughtering it for the sake of a Paschal offering. But if he started slaughtering it without specification, and then slaughtered it for the sake of a Paschal offering, it is fit. Apparently, if one slaughters an offering without specification, it still satisfies the obligation of the owner. So the Gemara responds, perhaps there it is different, as the Mishnah is saying that its ultimate intent proves the nature of his original intent. Since his ultimate intent was to sacrifice a Paschal offering, that was presumably his initial intent as well. Here, by contrast, there is no ultimate expression of proper intent. Alternatively, it can be explained that even if one's ultimate intent is not considered proof of his original intent, the Mishnah still uses the same term in both cases to preserve symmetry. Since in the former clause, the Tana taught using the language for their sake, and then not for their sake, teaching that original intent is considered proof of ultimate intent. The Tana also taught the second clause using the language not for their sake and then for their sake. In any event, there is no proof from that Mishnah that an offering slaughtered without specification satisfies its owner's obligation. Rather, perhaps this halakha is derived from that Mishnah in 46b, which states, the offering is slaughtered for the sake of 6 matters, for the sake of the particular offering, for the sake of the one sacrificing the offering, meaning the owner, for the sake of God, for the sake of consumption by fire on the altar, for the sake of sacrificing it in a manner that gives an aroma, and for the sake of pleasing God. The sin offering and the guilt offering are slaughtered for the sake of atonement for the sin. So 7th. The Mishnah on 46b continues, Rabbi Yoshi said, even in the case of one who did not have in mind to slaughter the offering for the sake of any of these, the offering is fit, since this is a stipulation of the court. So the Gemara explains Rabbi Yoshi's opinions. The Gemara explains Rabbi Yoshi's opinion. The court stipulated that one should not say that he is slaughtering the offering for its sake, lest he come to say that he is slaughtering it not for its sake. Therefore, one should not specify his intent at all. The Gemara infers, and if it enters your mind that if one slaughters an offering without specification, it is unfit, would the court arise and stipulate a matter that disqualifies the offering? Clearly, an offering slaughtered without specification is fit and satisfies the obligation of the owner. So the Gemara asks, and with regard to a bill of divorce, from where do we derive that it is written without specification as to which woman it is referring? It is not valid? If we say it inferred from that which we learned in a Mishnah, 18:24a, and in the case of a man who was passing through the marketplace and he heard scribes who write bills of divorce dictating to their students, the man so-and-so divorces so-and-so from the place of such and such, and the man said, this is my name, and that is the name of my wife, and he desires to use this bill for his divorce. This bill is unfit to divorce his wife with it. That is not a proof. It can be explained, perhaps, the Mishnah is in accordance with the explanation of Rav Papa. As Rav Papa says, here we are dealing with scribes who are wont to practice writing bills of divorce. And this bill of divorce is a draft and was not written for the sake of severance, meaning divorce, at all. But if a bill of divorce is written to be used for divorce, perhaps it is fit, even if written without specifying the woman in question. So rather, derive this halakha from the subsequent clause in that Mishnah. And that is the end of Daf 2 of Zevachim. Thanks for watching.